Inflation is still hot, hot, hot. While the news is mentioning that inflation is declining, we need to know the truth about what's actually going on. Where is this inflation heading? I'm going to give you the details and a little bit of a misunderstood interpretation of the way it all works. I've got the news you need to know right now, beginning with this. Inflation, I'm going to give you the updates, a few simple things. Number one, back on July 18th of this year, I said, quote, on a month-over-month basis, we could start seeing increases. And of course, that's exactly what is happening right here today. Now it has happened as the favorable year-over-year effect is over. So remember where we were 2021, then into 2022, inflation was going straight up. Now that became an issue suddenly because we were at basically no inflation or negative inflation in the way that they show it, and suddenly it's going up. So that year over year stat is really skewed. But on the way down, it works in this way where, hey, everything's doing better. But now we are at that inflection point, and that's going to show up in the information we have today, right here, looking at it. This is the CPI core services less shelter, okay? Because shelter has to be right now the biggest component of this. And so you will see that having such an impact, even though when we look at it in this way, you can see the data has shown that it has started to tick up. So when you're looking at the line at the top, that's going to represent the year over year. And then you look at the bottom with the green bars, that's month over month, okay? So it is still increasing right now. Don't get it twisted. This is showing us the CPI month over month, year over year, same trend. It happens to be just that the shelter part of the inflation is running hot. Consecutive monthly declines in headline CPI year over year. I'm just showing you that it was constantly going month after month of declines. That has changed. That trend is now over, at least this 1 month. So it broke that trend. We'll see if that continues. You could see this right here. Commodities, less food and energy year over year. This has certainly come down, no question about it. But the services, less energy services year over year. So we are still, that's 6.1. We are still paying way too much for services. This is incredible when you look at how much we're paying today. I just wanted to note the fact that yes, we do have the shelter being the biggest contributor to what we're experiencing now. Rents, mortgages, all of the house prices, everything to do with the house, in fact, has gone up. Furniture prices, energy prices, everything seems to be more expensive. We might be off the peak. We might not have shortages of just about everything, but certainly we are looking at an interesting time, and prices are off the charts for some people, depending on where they are. This is just showing us some additional information. You could look at it month over month. You could look at it year over year. You get the trend. We are declining in this respect, but understand that we have shifted in a way that suggests maybe, just maybe, inflation is very sticky. And what this means is that part of the increase in prices that have been going year over year, month over month, will remain at this level, maybe even higher. Who knows? And if it does come down, maybe it takes so long that the Federal Reserve was actually right. Could it be that we will experience these levels of inflation, their numbers, all the way through 2024? Well, only time will tell. I think when we look at this type of data, you might say to yourself, why are you looking at a CPI and core PCE knowing that that isn't even true? Well, I'm sure that your inflation rates are not represented by this data, right? And you've seen shadow stats. You've looked at all these other indications of inflation. Why would I cover this? I've said it before, but I need to make this clear every time. It's quite frankly, the Federal Reserve, the government, and businesses all move based on this data. They don't move based on John Williams' shadow stats. They don't move based on other indicators. They're using this stuff. So we got to know about this, but then we got to work twice as hard because we also have to know the real stuff. So this is what we are doing here. We're pulling the two shifts. We're on the double shift. Shelter, rent inflation year-over-year change. Now that has come down, but I need to make this clear. The prices are still rising, but the level at which they are rising has gone down. Like you can't say this is declining. It's the pace at which it is increasing is slowing down. You got to see that distinction. And when somebody makes that error, as far as I'm concerned, well, then they need to be, let's just say, told the truth. Now, I want to talk really briefly here about the money supply because these two go hand in hand. And as you will see, money supply may be reversing. We're going to talk about that really, really quickly here. I want to show you what's going on with the money supply. This is, in fact, depending how you look at it, it is inflation when we see it increasing, and it is deflation when that money supply comes down. That has an impact on the prices of everything. But again, just like the inflation, it's not as if the money supply is drastically falling, as I'll show you in this chart. That's the growth. That's the rate of change. So understand that distinction here. You could see money supply year-over-year change that has gone down, focusing on the gray line, but ultimately the other one is just another way to measure it. This is M2. When we see this type of data, all I'm highlighting is, quite frankly, that the inflation data and the money supply, they go in hand. There's a lot of different ways to measure money and currency. There's a lot there, but this is just one way, M2, and that's money in circulation. So we can see that over time, if we are to pump in a lot of money into the system, of course that's going to have an impact on the prices of things that we pay. Absolutely. And services happens to be the one that seems to be sticking around. Now let's talk about the consumer real quick. Couple notes: paying higher prices for everything, particularly services, as well as the the factors that we had seen with rent, with shelter. Those are the ones that are a real big problem, because you can't just not afford to have a place to live. I mean, it just doesn't work like that. So they put all those moratoriums in place. Those are all running out. The student loans got to be paid back, average $400 a month. You see what's going on. I think it's pretty clear when you look at the consumer in this regard. Like, you could look at that in different ways. Total dollar value and all that doesn't, it's not a good indication. This is one. This is real average weekly earnings. So your weekly earnings, but in a measurement come in here when you factor in inflation. Oh, all right. So the last 2 months, the data that came through showed positive. Hey, there's actually a little bit of growth here. But that looks to be reversing, and that might go in the negative again. Okay. Inflation is really sticking around, and people's wages and salaries aren't going up like they used to. I could tell you that much. This is just showing us the goods and services. So while goods have kind of stagnated in terms of increases in price, that's the top chart up there. I hope you can see that. The services have continued to go up. Look at that. Look at that blue line. And by the way, both of them are off their trend. They are definitely accelerating past what we saw in 2020. And then just showing us disposable income. I wanted to make it clear that over time, people just do not have that disposable income that they once did. Okay. And the government wants to spend, I can't believe this, but anyway, like the amount of money. So in 2022, fiscal year 2022, the federal government spent $1.19 trillion on 80 different welfare programs. And now they want to spend $2.6 trillion on new entitlement spending. Over $2 trillion alone for entitlement programs is unconscionable. And that's going to lead to, you got to understand this. Make this very clear. You could say, we need it, you better shut up, and all these things. Understand, When the government has all of this financing that it has to do, it's got to pay for entitlement programs, it's got to pay for infrastructure, it's got to pay for everything. How does it do that? Well, it issues these debt like bonds, right? And then you have investors that come up and they buy those bonds. Number one, you got a problem. If not enough people come to buy those bonds, the Federal Reserve has to come and buy them, monetizing the debt and devaluing your currency. The second thing is, quite frankly, during this process, when you have levels of inflation that are this high, you got interest rates that are high, the borrowing costs are higher, and that puts more pressure on you, the taxpayer, the individual. You got to pay that back. So you've got double trouble and you got to watch out. It is a fine balance in between these. So be careful what you wish for. Inflation, real quick. I just wanted to show you apartment rents hit new high in 3 New York City boroughs. Not surprising. Looking at it, rising global food prices are portent of rising inflation, just showing us that, of course, certainly when people got to pay more just for their basic essentials, that has an impact on them. China's PPI is a key driver of U.S. consumer inflation. This is pushed forward 3 months, obviously, because when what happens in China or any other developing nation that's bringing products into the US, China being number one in that regard, you got to see when their prices are going up. Like for me, for instance, in what I do, I'm looking at wages increasing, or the warehousing increasing, just the raw materials increasing. So what happens? The products cost more. They cost more to make. You got to either go out of business or you increase prices. That is the exact result of what we are seeing right here, right now. I experienced this myself. Thailand's white rice, 5%. You look at that, just showing us rice prices have increased. Going on, you had floods in China. You got problems elsewhere, restrictions, export bans, some of them anyway, in India. And so you could see the price of this going up. That of course affects people, their bottom line. Simple things are rice and beans are feeding a lot of people. When the prices rise to this level, you got an issue. And then of course the back to work barometer for New York, 46%. They've got a problem with commercial real estate. It's going on here. People don't want to, by the way, they do not want to go back to work. This survey suggests people want to stay at home. You've got problems left, right, and center here, but I just wanted to make it clear that there are things that we can do. I wrote these down. I want to make it clear what you've got to do to thrive and prosper. If some things are going up in price, number one, you think rice is going to go up in price, simply buy that rice. You can also buy into the commodities. If you thought oil was going to go up for one reason or another, you can buy into oil. I mean, that's just a matter of fact, so that as it increases, that kind of balances itself out. If you believe that stocks will fall, well, then you can buy an inverse ETF. So essentially betting that the markets are going to come down. So however many shares of that you had bought, that would come up and sort of balance you out. You don't have to sell. Okay, you don't have to sell everything and say, oh no, I'm just going to sell everything, I'm going to stick it under my mattress and so on. No, you can buy an inverse ETF. This applies on the short term only, okay? If you thought, you know what, for the next few months, just like in 2020, I kept saying it, you've got to be aware of these things. These are just some very simple things that you can do to mitigate some of the, the damages that are going on right now today. I hope that was helpful to you. I want to highlight the comment of the day. Here it is. What are your thoughts about China's revaluation of gold? This is from Jack the Rabbit Music. What are your thoughts about China's revaluation of gold? Do you believe America has any gold reserves, or are they just BSing us? All right. Haven't seen what's going on inside there with the reserves, right? Well, answer was essentially that I really don't believe. First of all, you had the little Munchkin, Stephen Munchkin. He went in there and he had what I think is potentially one of the funniest tweets that was ever done. He said something like, hey, okay, everything's great here. Like he went to Fort Knox and just tweeted out, everything is all good with all the golds here. Like as if he was there counting all the bars. I mean, it's ridiculous. There's no audit that's been done. They don't know. I mean, come on. The idea was that they got rid of it long ago. They leased it out. Nobody really knows, but it's kind of weird that they won't even do any sort of, they're willing to spend a lot of money in certain places, but they won't just check and make sure everything's good. You just send a tweet out. Anyway, that's the way I see what's going on with gold. I want to thank you for your comments. I'll try to highlight a comment of the day. I want to thank you very much. If you want to interact with me directly, if you want to join over 1,000 like-minded people in this community as we go into the Money GPS 2.0, join me on Discord, totally free. I will see you on Discord so that we can have some discourse right down there. Hit that link in the description, and I'll see you there.